if you punish the folks who work and improve and you give free money to those who don't work and improve, you indirectly incentivize the second behavior. If you look at the most liberal markets around the country, I'm just going to call it like it is, San Francisco's the Los Angeles, Chicago is another one. These are the most like highest crime. You got the highest drug issue, you got the highest homeless issue. And these are some of the most liberal areas in the country. And so you mentioned when you got in office, you guys reduced the homeless issue by double digits. What was the main lever or the biggest lever that you guys pulled in order to do that? All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, I got a special guest. I got the former mayor of San Diego live in the studio to talk shop. I got my man, Mr. Kevin Faulconer. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Rich, good morning. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. And man, it's crazy because we both live in San Diego. I've lived here for quite some time, about 20 years now, and been in Italy about 8 years. Love it down here. But is it not the best city in the country?
Well, I'm a little biased.
Yes.
And the answer is yes. And especially, and I love your studio.
Thank you.
It's fantastic what you've done. And this neighborhood, of course, Little Italy, it's one of the flagships of our city. When I think back, Rich, we were talking earlier, when I think back of what Little Italy, was and what it's become, and just the vibrancy and, people living here, working here, the hospitality industry, obviously, it represents, I think, in a lot of ways, the best of what's happening in San Diego.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of neighborhoods in San Diego gentrify over the last 10 years or so. North Park, South Park, Golden Hill. And then you got Little Italy. And then you got, PB, OB, all these really cool pocket neighborhoods, which I think is the main reason why people just love it. Obviously, you got the great weather, but you can drive from any corner of the city to the other corner in, 30 minutes time. There's typically not a lot of traffic. You get the best beaches down here, the best vibes, the best restaurant. And if you look at the four major markets in all of California, you got the Bay Area, Los Angeles, Orange County, and then San Diego. And from an affordability standpoint, San Diego is still the most affordable. Cheapest cost of living, you got the best beaches, the best vibe. And so I feel like now the cat's out of the bag. Lot of people are starting to migrate.
I think it's
down
been
here.
out of the bag for a little bit, but
Yeah.
But I will agree with your premise there. And when we see what's going on, particularly in other places, the cost of living, and obviously it goes up here too. But this is a place, Rich, that everybody's always, once they've discovered it, like this is where I want to be. I mean, I look at myself when I grew up in Ventura County, in Oxnard, and I came down here to San Diego State, and I'm like, man, this place is where it's happening. So it's never easy to make it in San Diego, but I always say, San Diego is just like, it's a big city, but it's a small town. You get to know people, and you find, I think, that kind of vibe here in San Diego that you don't get in other places.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were mayor of San Diego 2014 to 2020. And I would say since 2020, I have felt, and obviously I'm speculating, but just living downtown, I feel like there's been a tick up in the homeless issue downtown. And if you look at East Village, Gaslamp, and then Little Italy, I feel like these neighborhoods are kind of trending in different directions. From a real estate perspective, you've seen a lot of high rises go up. And a lot of the developers that have built out in East Village, I know a lot of those projects started back when the San Diego Chargers were talking about maybe moving their stadium down there and staying. Which would have there would have been a lot more development, retail. No doubt it would have cleaned up that part of the area, but the Chargers go to LA. And I feel like a lot of those developers that built in East Village, they're struggling to lease those places up. But on the flip side, you look at real estate here in Little Italy. I live in a brand new high rise called Simone, 440 units. That entire thing leased up in 9 months. And just a lot of growth here. Best restaurants are here. You don't even see police cars in Little Italy. But on the flip side, you go to Gaslamp, East Village, there's homeless everywhere, there's crime everywhere. How is it that this neighborhood, being so close to Gaslamp and East Village, is drastically different in the direction that they're headed?
Well, look at it, and I think you hit the nail on the head on what I believe is the issue right now in San Diego, and it's the issue in every city, big city in California, actually small cities too, the issue of homelessness. And you're right, it's going the wrong way. And it's been up by double digits. And I'll tell you, Rich, that was homelessness I vividly remember when I first started it as mayor. Homelessness wasn't an issue, but it wasn't what it became. And when I look at when I left office, I probably spent more time on that issue than any other. We were the only big city in California while I was mayor where we actually drove homelessness down. and we drove it down by double digits. Because it affects everything you do. It affects your quality of life. It affects, obviously, for the lives of folks that are experiencing it and going through it, but also for neighbors, people that are coming downtown, people that want to invest in downtown. And if you let it go the wrong way, then to your point, you see investment not happening in your city. You get the perception and the reality of safety. And so it is incredibly important that, and I've been pretty vocal about this as well, that San Diego turn that back around. In my opinion, we need to dramatically add shelter space. It's something we did while I was mayor, but you also have to enforce to say it's not okay to allow somebody to put a tent up in front of your house or your business and think that, I hope you change your mind. No, you have to enforce. You have to say, we have a safe, clean, sanitary place for you to go. You have to provide that place, but then you have to enforce that folks use it. And when you do that, Rich, you get, you're helping people. You're saying there are consequences for actions. And you have that vibrancy that, again, you want to do the right thing, and you have to make a difference. Because when I see what's going on in, Los Angeles and San Francisco, you talk
It's
about
even worse up
homelessness,
there.
out of control. So this is the issue, in my opinion, right now. It's not a partisan issue, right? It's not Democrat or Republican, but what's the right thing that we should be doing in San Diego? The right thing is we actually have to make a difference on our streets. There can be no bigger thing, in my opinion, than the future success of downtown and the investments and people like you that are making and folks that are doing that to say, we know we're going to have standards. We know we're going to have elected officials that have the political will to make a difference on the street. And when you do that, you can drive, you can flourish, and as I said, you can help people that need it the most.
Look, I'm by no means any politician, but I do know that if you punish the folks who work and improve, and you give free money to those who don't work and improve, you indirectly incentivize the second behavior. If you look at the most liberal markets around the country, I'm just going to call it like it is, the San Franciscos, the Los Angeles, the, what else we got out there? Chicago is another one. These are the most highest crime. You got the highest drug issue. You got the highest homeless issue. And these are some of the most liberal areas in the country. And so you mentioned when you got in office, you guys reduced the homeless issue by double digits. What was the main lever or the biggest lever that you guys pulled in order to do that?
I think it was that really those twin pillars of, we're going to provide a place for you to go. And so we provided safe parking lots. We provided, the bridge shelters downtown. We provided, so many other things. And we had great operators and, folks like Alpha Project and Bob McElroy, when I look at somebody like what Donnie D is doing with the rescue mission. But people knew that they had a mayor that says, we're going to make a difference on the streets. And I felt so strongly about the standards, Rich, and again, on quality of life. I created a new division within the San Diego Police Department called the Neighborhood Policing Division, whose sole focus was on homelessness and quality of life. It made a difference. People knew that there were standards, and I can tell you, nobody came up to me when I was mayor and said, Mr. Mayor, I wish that tent was back out in front of my house, or I wish that tent was back out in front of my business district. No, people said, we see a difference. And again, it's particularly when you have to be compassionate about what's going on, but you have to have standards. And particularly when you're seeing folks that have substance abuse or mental health, you have to go in there and say, hey, we're going to have a place for you to go, but I'm not going to let you kill yourself on my sidewalk doing heroin, meth, fentanyl. And you have to, again, say, this is what we accept and this is what we don't accept. And when you do that, it makes a difference. That's what's been missing, in my opinion. You have to have the political will that says, we're going to do this. And when you do it, guess what? People get the help that they need, number one. And you send, again, you're having that quality of life. Because moms and dads, when they're walking their kids down to the restaurant or for school, they deserve the ability to do that without seeing what's happening in other places. And I think you're seeing a shift right now, and it's positive. Particularly when we saw the passage of Prop 36, which was hugely important, which says, you can't do heroin and meth, and it was, and go into a store and steal $950 worth of things and no consequences. So Californians said, we're going to change that. We've had some new elections up in, we look up in San Francisco and San Jose because people have, seen what's going on. So I think it's an opportunity for us to say, hey, let's get back to what we know works. Let's have some common sense, and let's have some leaders that are going to do the right thing.
No, it's big. And if you think about, you mentioned before we started recording, like tourism and people coming and visiting your city, does so much for local business out here. And so when you have these streets of downtown San Diego with homeless, I mean, you go out to some of these areas a little bit further down the block. I mean, it's like a zombie apocalypse. People walking around with their pants off,
Yeah, and that's
middle of the daytime. It's
it
like, what is
is.
going on?
And that's not who we are as
Mhm.
San Diegans. And look, we all fight for business and tourism and hospitality. Convention center. I think that's going to be expanded.
That San Diego is the number 2 market right now in terms of business conventions for the entire country.
And we can't take that for granted, right? People have a choice. They choose where they want to bring their convention, where they want to spend their dollars. You've seen, as an example, conventions leave San Francisco because it wasn't safe. And so we cannot take for granted what we have here in San Diego. And you mentioned, the gas lamp and others. That's incredibly important to us to make sure that it is safe. We are helping folks get off the street, but again, we are having consequences for action. So when you do that, when there are clear rules of the road, everybody benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a bunch of fires up in Los Angeles about 3 to 4 weeks ago. Grant Cardone was recently in town. He's doing a big California tour right now, speaking on all the politics, all the changes that are needed here in California. And my condolences go out to all the victims of the folks that lost their homes up there. But curious for you, macro perspective, what are your thoughts as you see all those homes lost up in LA?
Yeah, I mean, it's your heart. It's devastating. And to see the pictures, and I've talked to folks who've actually gone up and seen it firsthand. And I had, many friends that had to evacuate. I mean, it's just heart wrenching what happened and the scale, that happened. And look, we're no stranger to that in San Diego. When we think back to the Cedar Fire and the Witch Creek Fire, and what that meant and the devastation. And so, when I look at Californians, and you just always have to be prepared. You have to ensure that that your fire department is staffed and you're bringing in the resources. And particularly when you see high wind events that would happened up in Los Angeles, right? I mean, I vividly remember, what some of the times that I would, worry the most about what was happening was in October, in November, when I was mayor. We would staff up the department. We would have folks, extra overtime for everybody. We brought in some of the super scoopers from Canada. It cost us a lot of money. But I'm like, having learned and seen how devastating fires can be, particularly here in the canyons and when they start in the east and they come to the west. In my opinion, you can't spend enough money to be prepared. But we have to, get rid of some of these dumb policies that don't let you cut back brush and other things, because that's just not going to go away.
Yeah. And for the folks listening that aren't, familiar with California, that time of year, kind of in the fall, the brush is all dry. And then we get the Santa Ana winds. Sometimes the winds blow out of the east.
Yeah.
And that blows that dry, warmer desert air out towards the ocean. And that is the magic formula for these fires to go. I feel like there was a couple large fires in San Diego. I'm going to say 2004 and again I want to say 2007 or 2008, where schools, businesses, everything just shut down for an entire week. I remember going outside and you just literally San Diego was up in a cloud of smoke and just ash everywhere.
We were talking about my daughter earlier, and she's going to be graduating. She was born and
from U of A.
Yeah, she was born during the Cedar Fire, and the almost had to be evacuated in the hospital in Hillcrest, because part of San Diego, far away from the fires, because the smoke was that thick. I mean, and so it is, that is a fact of life in California, but you have to prepare for it, and you cannot keep doing things the same way.
So what are your thoughts on the insurance? Because if you look at real estate right now, and this is the issue for the last few years, we've seen a rise in insurance costs nationwide. This is not just health insurance, auto insurance, but I'm speaking particularly on property insurance. And this is both residential, but also on the commercial side. And it's been a challenge over the last 3-4 years for a lot of real estate investors. The rise in insurance costs. And you're seeing a lot of these insurance companies pull out of certain markets.
Right. Look, they vote with their feet; they leave.
Yeah,
and you have to have an administration that says we cannot allow this to happen. You can't just virtue signal and say, you guys go, do whatever you want, and we'll be fine in California. No, you got to work and to say, look, we don't want to have all these companies leave. We have to figure out a process that lets them actually invest, and we can have multiple choices. Because if you've seen particularly what just happened in the Palisades in Altadena, that's going to wipe out whatever was there in the FAIR plan already. You have to have private insurance, and if you don't, you're not going to get the investment, and people aren't going to be protective that they need. So I think that mindset has to shift up in Sacramento. That says we're going to work with the industry and not drive them out of California.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the affordable housing crisis here in California. I know one of the plays here as a real estate investor, specifically in San Diego is a great market to do it, is we have the ability to go and buy single family properties now on larger lots, and you can build and develop ADUs, and sometimes you can build up to maybe even 10 and 12 apartment units in the backyard of a single family lot, which is something that I think has addressed the affordable housing issue. What's the ADU thing? Did that come into effect while you were in office?
We did some, and I'm a big fan if you do it in the right places.
Okay.
And I think the danger is,
What do you mean when you say in the right places?
well, I think zoning is incredibly important. I think there is a place for single family zoning. I think that's for families and others. There's some folks that disagree with that. I think they're wrong. I think you need to have single family zoning. I think you need to have multifamily zoning. I think if you go too far and you say we're going to let you build 10 basically mini apartments behind something in a single family residence, you're going to get a lot of blowback. And so to me, it's been always important that says we want to encourage density in places like where we are today in Little Italy, close to our trolley lines, close to our transit zones and the freeway, but you don't want to take single family neighborhoods whole scale and make those changes, because then you're just going to lose it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. I was actually touring a property. A couple of friends of mine, they're actually leaving the state. They're going out to South Carolina. They're bringing their kid with them. But anyhow, they asked me if I wanted to buy their house, and their house is on this large lot in Claremont. And they said, hey, like this thing is zoned for 12 apartment units. And as a matter of fact, our neighbor down the street just did it. And so I went over there to the property, and it just doesn't look right. Their neighbor did put 12 apartment units in this residential family-oriented area. There's no off-street parking, already a lot of crowded, congested parking on that cul-de-sac. And it just looks odd seeing a bunch of like
It
single-family
does,
homes
of course.
and then boom,
Right.
this big 12-unit apartment complex in the back. It just doesn't look right. And so ultimately, I didn't end up moving forward on that opportunity. But I agree with you. I think it does make sense in more congested areas closer to the water. Here in Little Italy, I got another project that I'm working on. And because of the bonus density program, you can actually go vertical in this particular plot of land that I have in Little Italy. So exploring what the highest and best use might be for that project. But I'm excited. We see a lot of development happening right now in San Diego. Little Italy specifically gets me excited. And I think that's only going to, if we can figure out how to clean up the homeless issue. Again, it's not an issue in Little Italy. Actually, I'm curious. Why do you think the homeless stay out of Little Italy? Why do they
I think
gravitate towards these other areas?
No, and let me just agree, by the way, back on the kind of the ADUs and development, you have to have that balance. And when you have a healthy balance, then it works. And if it gets out of balance, then it doesn't, obviously. But again, back to the issue of homelessness, it's everywhere. But I tell you what, I give extra special credit, if you will, to your business improvement district here in Little Italy. It's called the Little Italy Association. And those are men and women, man, they love it. They're out there making this places clean. It's safe. They're hustling, and they do a remarkable job. And so we need to take that same kind of spirit in others, again, citywide. And I think that, again, if you need people in office that are going to say, this is what we accept and what we don't accept. Ultimately, you have to have political will to change that dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what happens here with all that. And speaking of barrier to entry, obviously we know California historically, unlike areas like Texas, Florida, Arizona, has a lot of bureaucracy, red tape for business owners. We see a lot of entrepreneurs leave. Grant Cardone left, 1,500 employees now in Miami. Elon Musk recently left. Joe Rogan left a few years back. So how do we, obviously, I think you can take advantage, like we're taking advantage of the bureaucracy and red tape here. For example, what we do here with Summers Capital is we buy boutique hotels that are underperforming, we'll renovate them, but we're taking advantage of the bureaucracy and red tape here because we like the Airbnb regulation. It brings more demand to the boutique hotels. And so, for example, I got a luxury Airbnb in Scottsdale that performs very well. I never want to own a boutique hotel in Scottsdale because there's 6,000 Airbnbs out there. I don't want to compete with all that. So there's ways to take advantage of this bureaucracy, the red tape, the barriers to entry. But if we want to get businesses to migrate back into California, we want to attract a lot more business growth, population growth, employment growth, which is ultimately what drives the local economy. What changes do you foresee need to happen here in California in order to start attracting bigger businesses to move
Yeah,
out?
no, and look, I think you hit the nail on the head. What we were talking about earlier, when it's not working, right? We're in a competitive environment, competitive marketplace. People leave. Right, I'm going to move my business, or I'm going to move to another state where the tax base is a lot lower. People who are struggling to provide for their families and to do that. So we have to have an environment that says we want to encourage businesses to be here. We cannot tax you, out of your minds, because you will leave. And so it really, again, it starts at the top. And when we've seen all the U-Hauls, right, they're going one way. They're going out of California, and again, people vote with their feet. So I think it's incredibly important to say we want to have business policies that say we're going to make it easier for you to invest in San Diego, in California. We're not going to, slow you down with regulations that take, a year and a half, when if you went to another state, it might be 90 days. All of that matters, Rich. It all matters. It's called business climate. And so if we're not doing the right thing in California, it's like that frog in the boiling water. And I think you're seeing some of that as well. So look, I'm a big believer that the pendulum swings both ways, but we've got to have it swing back towards the center and more common sense here in California, because when it gets so out of whack, like we've seen, it's too hard for you to actually invest. You're not going to be able to afford a house here. And we're going to price people out of it. So again, you got a guy who was in elected office here, right? So I'm going to always kind of default back to, that's why policies matter. That's why you have to have, men and women in office that say, I see what's happening, and that's real. I want you to stay. I want you to be successful. I want you to invest in California and in San Diego. And when we do that, when we have that type of economy, then we're growing good quality jobs. Then, I have dollars at the city to pave roads, open parks and libraries, right? A strong economy makes for a healthy state and a healthy city. If you have the opposite, you're going to go the wrong way. And we're in jeopardy in that in California right now.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, from a macro perspective, if you want to step back and really see what's going on, I encourage all the listeners, like, go drive around the block of whatever city you live in. And that's going to give you a really good clue of what's going on. I mean, I drive around San Diego. I see a lot of development going on, a lot of really cool projects, a lot of money being invested into a lot of areas of San Diego. But I don't know. I'm bullish on it, even though the politics right now, like you said, the pendulum's going to swing, right? The politics right now are not the most favorable. I'm still bullish on San Diego real estate specifically. If you look at San Diego, they call it an island because to the north you got Camp Pendleton, to the west you got the Pacific Ocean, to the south you got the Mexican border, and to the east you got the mountain ranges. So from a supply standpoint, there's not a lot of land to build on. And so I think as the political system kind of sways the other way, I think that it's only going to continue to bode well for San Diego. We have one of the largest Navy populations in the entire country. The military out here. And so I think we have a lot of reason to be excited. We got a lot of biotech companies migrating down. And so I'm personally bullish on San Diego. And I think, if you're listening to this podcast right now, it's like there's always going to be bad news out there. But I think this is the best time to be alive, man. They were already calling this the greatest transfer of wealth, Kevin, in American history. We got all these boomers retiring in the next 6 years. All this wealth is going to change hands. And love them or hate them, we got a real estate investor that just took office. The Republicans are controlling the House. The Republicans are controlling the Senate. And I think there's going to be a lot of real estate investor-friendly, a lot of business entrepreneur-friendly policies that get put in place in these next 4 years. And so, I don't know. I think it's an interesting time that we live in. 4.8 billion people use social media. The playing field is now level. And so I think for anyone listening to this right now, if you're, sitting on the sidelines, you feel stuck, you're looking for that next thing, I think the opportunity is happening right now. And so I'm excited for it. And I'm excited for these next few years, man.
Look,
I think that the future looks bright.
I am too. And I'm particularly, we were talking about how folks are leaving California. Look, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving this state, and I'm not leaving the city in San Diego. And because I think there are incredible opportunities and it's worth fighting for. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what this is about. And so that's why it's incredibly important that folks that are in the investment world, they're in the business world, as I always say, get involved, man. Get involved in sometimes, I don't want to get involved in politics. Well, politics has everything to do with, a successful business climate or not, whether it's on the national level, whether it's on the state level, or whether it's on a local level. And so getting involved in how that works, even on the local level, how long does it take you to permit or process something to get, something open? That matters, right? What is our local, tax incentives or our tax penalties? That matters. What is our climate in terms of our quality of life? The homeless population out of control? Are schools good? All of that goes into business climate and when folks are making a decision to invest. So that nexus of, getting involved is incredibly important. And I think those that do help shape what their community's like. And we need people that are pushing, so we don't have a bunch of folks in elected office who have no business experience and no real world experience, because when we do, usually that's not a place that functions too well.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, we just got another boutique hotel under contract in my hometown of San Clemente, California, located not too far from the beach. This will make 5 boutique hotels in our real estate investment fund. So if you are looking for passive income and tax benefits, visit summerscapital.com/invest to book a free call with my team. Again, that's summerscapital.com/invest to book a free call with my team. Now back to the show. So we know state income tax is 13% now. I think that if we really want to start attracting more people to come into California, we got to bring that back down. How would you bring that 13% income tax down to single digits?
Well, you could lower it. And that's the point, right? Because as entrepreneurs know, when you tax me less, that means I can actually grow more, right? And I'm gonna have a stronger economy, which means more dollars into the government, right? With sales tax, other tax, and growth and investment and all of that. And so are we going to incentivize or are we going to punish? I mean, those are two different philosophies. And I've always been on the side of let folks that want to invest and do that, they're going to do, it's going to work. But if I'm sitting at City Hall or if I'm sitting at the state capitol and saying, I know what's better and I'm just going to, tax you, well, then you're going to leave, right? You're, as I said, you're going to go somewhere else. And so you have to provide those incentives. And when we see those states and those cities that are providing that, capital flows there. Investors flow there. Yes, we have great weather here. Yes, we have the ocean. Yes, we have phenomenal people. But we also have to match that with a climate that says, we want you to be successful in California. That's the mindset that I'm talking about. And that's why it's incredibly important. I think that we have people in elected office that understand that and drive that.
What are your thoughts behind the last administration hiring, 80,000 IRS agents?
Well, look, and not only that, but look at the inflation and everything else, right? When he gave all that money away with no consequences. I mean, those macroeconomic principles are incredibly important. And so if you're just spending money willy-nilly, right? If you're out there trying to penalize everybody rather than saying, hey, I want you to grow, I want you to invest, you're going to get what we had. I think we have a real opportunity right now. I think there's a lot of optimism, Rich. I think that you have to incentivize that and not say, we're going to pass so many policies here in California that make it, almost impossible for you to do business.
Yeah, I agree. So I saw you were hanging out with Donald Trump not too long ago. You had a relationship with Donald. How's that relationship with Donald like?
When I was mayor, I was at the White House under the Trump administration. I was in the White House under, the Obama administration. And I think it's, again, back to why it matters, right? I was always fighting for San Diego. I was fighting for, and for trade. I was fighting for, all the stuff that I thought we should be doing with homelessness. And so I think, again, getting involved, that's why it's so incredibly important. That was my job, obviously, as mayor. And it was I love the opportunity to serve as mayor of San Diego for 2 terms. And most of the problems that we see, as I said, they're not partisan problems. They're like common sense problems, man. And if you can work with Republicans, if you can work with Democrats, but if you can focus on saying, I actually need to make a difference out here on the street, you can see it with your eyes, right? And so I always took the approach that said, man, we just got to get things done. And when you do that, man, I think the sky's the limit.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the tariff thing?
Yeah, and I think that there's, as the president has said, he's going to really try to fight for American jobs and American businesses. I think that's incredibly important. And so, we have to make sure that we have our own supply. I think the new administration knows how to negotiate very well. And so I think that you're going to see a lot of that negotiation go back and forth in the coming weeks and months, and we'll see how it all actually works out.
Yeah, it's crazy, like the change in perspective. I mean, we had the last administration hires 80,000 IRS agents. This administration is having conversations about eliminating income taxes altogether. Like, and it's just a different perspective, built differently, right?
It is, and again, that's that mindset of why I think that's where are you coming from? What's your background? And if your background is I believe in small business, I believe in investors, I believe in entrepreneurship, then that engine is going to work and to throw off more revenue. When we have a strong economy, then you have the ability to provide those services from the government. But if you're taxing your economy and you're stifling growth, it's not going to work. It's just proven that. And so I think right now you're going to see in this country, I think this is a resurgence of entrepreneurism. And I think we're all hoping that when we see that inflation is now going to start going the other direction, I think there's a lot more room, obviously, for rates to be lowered. And when we see that, boy, those people that are ready, it's going to be phenomenally important.
What are your thoughts on Elon Musk, getting involved with some of the politics and
Oh,
being close to Donald?
I think it's been great to see that spirit, and I mean, it's great to see, let's go in and I've seen folks on the other side saying, oh, well, you can't do this, and you can't do. It wasn't working before. We were wasting billions of dollars, and so part of politics. Oh, pushback. I don't. We need to get control of this federal bureaucracy that is dramatically overspending. And so you are going to see, I predict, a lot of these programs that started, we don't need them anymore. And you've got to free up, again, that if we're getting rid of that, then I'm not going to have to, if I'm the federal government, have to, tax people for all this stuff that God knows where it's going. Fraud, waste, and abuse is rampant in the federal government. We should have as many people as we can to root it out. We should have people rooted out at the state. We should have people rooted out at the local level. I never forgot, the tax dollars that we're dealing with. It's your money. You're paying for it, right? And so, let's actually have some checks and balances. I remember when I was in office, we started, the auditor and the independent audit for the city of San Diego, because our city was in trouble for what they wasn't doing financially. That's important, right? You have to have trust in all of that, and so overseeing how things are spending and calling it out and stopping it, I think that's a very good thing right now.
Yeah, I saw a lot of this firsthand. So I was a 11-year air traffic controller for the FAA, so Federal Aviation
No, I didn't
Administration.
know that. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
great.
Department
Yeah.
of Transportation. And so,
Uh-huh.
obviously it's a union position. But I saw firsthand, a lot of the inefficiencies that went on in that career field. I mean, there's folks that have DUIs, they can't stop taking drugs, they won't let them control airplanes, but they'll give them a desk job in the back, and they'll just work there, make a couple $100,000 a year working a desk job. Some of them are remote, so they don't have to go in. And 25 years, they get a pension, all this sort of stuff. And so there's not really a lot of accountability. And, obviously the union protects a lot of these folks. Most of them are great people, but there's a lot of inefficiencies in terms of like the way tax dollars are being spent. And I saw it, and so that's just one branch, right? I can't imagine some of the other inefficiencies in some of these other branches, but I'm with you there. I think, bringing in folks that actually know how to operate, minimize expenses, know how to be efficient, know how to maximize output is a win, because it's going to lower the tax dollars as well.
Well, of course it is. And as mayor of San Diego, we had 11,000 employees, right? There were some very, very good employees, and there were some employees that needed to go work somewhere else. And that was one of the toughest things, was to try to get through that system, right? And you have to be able to do that. And so I think with the new administration and what they're looking at doing, this is healthy. This is needed. We have to make some significant changes. And I think you're seeing that now in Washington. You get a lot of people that are blowing back on it, but you know what? When it's bloated, when it's not working, you cannot keep doing business as usual. And I think that's the real opportunity for us right now. And again, I think you're seeing it. You see it in the polls and others. Democrats, independents, and Republicans are all saying, yes, Mr. President, we want that change.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on the Seaport Village project here in San Diego? We know Seaport Village has been around since the 80s. personally, I walk down there probably about 5 times a week. I'll walk down from my place in Lit, Italy, down to the Hilton Bayfront and back. It's a great walk, about 4 miles along the water. And I'm always walking past Seaport. But anyways, I know there's a big redevelopment project going on down there. What are your thoughts on that?
Heck of an opportunity. And I've seen it. That's going to go through the port of San Diego. But when you look at that, again, that's investment. That's, bringing in, opportunities. And so I think particularly for that piece of property, the sky's the limit. There's some great folks that are negotiating with the port right now, that are longtime San Diegans that want the best for this city and this port. So I think it's going to be a phenomenal project.
What are some of the highlights?
It's all, lower level right now, right? And so they're going to bring in not only tourism options, hotels, others, things for locals as well. And I remember when I was a kid and Seaport Village like first opened. So, you're constantly, redeveloping, you're constantly improving, and access to the waterfront. And so I think some of their proposals are going to be great. It's going to be right next to what I think all of us believe will be an expanded convention center. Again, back to that economic engine that drives us.
You guys were talking about that back in the days of the Charger Stadium going down there.
Yeah, I mean, conventions work, right? I mean, when TOT revenue, transient occupancy tax, that's our third largest source of revenue in San Diego behind sales tax and property tax. And so when we can attract folks to come into our hotels, stay, have a great time in San Diego, spend money, right? I always tell people to spend money. It never goes away, even though I'm not mayor anymore.
You can always get the money back.
That's right. That's a competitive advantage for us. And so it's a clean, great way to raise money. And when we have visitors and tourists that are coming in and spending our money, then those are dollars that San Diegans aren't having to pay. So it's a win-win. And that's why I'm so bullish on what the tourism and hospitality industry means to San Diego and California in general. And you need to have folks that are going to support that and grow that.
Yeah. So you talked about the convention center maybe being redeveloped. While you were in office, there was talks about the San Diego Chargers potentially staying. Dean Spanos wanted to potentially move the team up to Los Angeles. Chargers had been here for like 40-something years at the time, and it was a big deal. And, ultimately it went up to vote, and the Chargers were looking at potentially staying here in San Diego. There was a site map for a new stadium down in East Village, San Diego, right next to Petco Park. And I think with that was going to be a redevelopment of the convention center. Talk about all the stuff that went into that whole proposal.
Yeah, and you're right. And they put it on the ballot and it didn't pass. And the team, I think they made the wrong decision. I think you had a fan base here in San Diego that's, incredibly supportive. And I think you've seen that. And I think then voters came back and, supported the convention center expansion just a couple years later. So people understand how important that is. And in the meantime, what you've seen is, Snapdragon Stadium being, built in Mission Valley here. It's a great stadium. The San Diego, Aztecs are playing there. The Padres have some great plans for right next door to Petco Park and Tailgate. And so, a lot of really great sports related things that are happening in San Diego. I'm biased because I'm a San Diego State guy. My Aztec basketball is doing great. We got
they've always
the tournament
been good.
coming. Wasn't always.
Well, as of the last like 15 years or so.
But I'll tell you, man, that championship game a couple years back in Houston was out there. A lot of us who spent.
Oh, you went out to the game?
Yeah.
I'm a Aztec basketball fan as well.
Good man. So it was.
I still think
we waited a long time for that.
Yeah, in 2020 I still think they could have made a good run. They were like ranked top 5 all year.
COVID shut us down.
Undefeated most of the season, right. and then they didn't even do a tournament that year. But I always look at that year as like that. I think that was the best team they had.
It was a special team. And our team a couple of years ago, and I look at the kids now. I mean, the kids, they're a bunch of folks that never played together, and they're doing great. I'm a huge fan of Brian Dutcher and what he's meant to the tournament. I mean, heck, when I was out at San Diego State is when we voted to build the new arena on campus, and what that has meant to Aztec basketball. So, I mean, I think it's a great time. We're here in February, right? March Madness is around the corner, so we got the Mountain West tournament coming up. So I have high hopes, as I always do, for Aztec basketball. But that's just what they've meant to San Diego is incredible.
Real quick, back to the Chargers that year when they left. I believe it was I want to say 2016. The vote was up for the city of San Diego, and I believe the NFL and Roger Goodell were going to throw in $1 million. I'm sorry, they're going to throw in $300 million towards the new stadium if the Chargers stayed. And I believe the taxpayers would not pay for it if you lived in San Diego, but people that would come in, there was going to be a hotel tax. I believe it was an increase in hotel tax.
That's correct.
So if you lived in San Diego and you didn't stay in a hotel that year, you were not going to pay to fund this new stadium. But for anyone that was coming to visit, you're going to pay an increase in hotel tax. I'm sure the hotel lobbyists at the time had their say in it. But why do you think that this got voted down? I mean, it wasn't even close. It was not even close.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Anytime you're trying to raise any type of revenue, whether it's TOT or others, it's tough to get people to push the yes button, right? And so I think there was just, kind of a lot of things that went into that with the convention center and others. And again, the importance of, tourism and what that means. I think a lot of folks didn't give up, and they came back, a couple of years later and said, we need to actually expand our convention center. And they did.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people might blame the cities and all this for sports teams moving, but in all reality, this happens a lot. In all reality, I think it comes down, a lot of the blame should be on the owners. If you look at some of the other owners in not just NFL, but NBA, look what Steve Ballmer did with the LA Clippers. He built them their own arena outside of Staples Center on the other side of town in Inglewood. And he funded it with his own money. He didn't go to taxpayers. And so I think a lot of this
easier for that to happen when you do that. That's correct.
Yeah, it is.
Correct.
And so I think a lot of the blame does fall on the owners. So, maybe
San Diego's such a great sports town. And again, when I look at what the Padres did last year too, and, I'm just, it's really, I think looking up, we got obviously the soccer team starting, coming this year. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of great expectations. And I think rightfully so. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Kevin, I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me, man. I'm a big fan of everything you're doing. And I'll be rooting for you here in these next few years. I'm excited to see where California politics go over these next few years.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for taking some time to talk about why policy matters, why politics matter, and why you have to get involved. So keep doing what you're doing. When you're successful, Rich, our city's successful. So thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. Kevin, where can the folks get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
KevinFaulconer.com.
There it is. He's Kevin Faulconer. Rich Summers listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.